USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith alongside Chris Treviño for instant analysis from USC's Tuesday practice of Colorado week. And Chris, we got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. We're wearing the same shirt, nice shirt by the way, and in very nice weather as well.
We did not plan this, but it'll help the fans figure out who is who, because we get confused a lot, obviously. So, yeah, we're twinning today. Hallelujah. It is a beautiful day. You know, we're a few weeks away from having to wear sweaters and jackets all the time, so we're taking it in, and this is another great day of practice for the weather report, Jack.
And we don't have the same sweaters, so we just have to get the same shirt wearing done now. But as we mentioned, it's Colorado week. It's a week that's been talked about for quite some time because obviously Colorado having their turnaround this year under new head coach Deion Sanders. They did lose last week, but really this game has been circled, as Jamil Muhammad said, since before the Stanford game for USC. Everyone wants to see these two teams play. There have been talks about the two similarities between the way that these rosters have been constructed. Everyone's kind of talking about Lincoln Riley and Deion Sanders, and really for the first time we got to talk to Lincoln Riley about what he views Colorado as and his relationship with Deion Sanders. What'd you take away from that?
This game has lost just a little bit of luster. It did, obviously, with the loss to Oregon and them dropping out of the top 25, this not being a top 25 matchup. But that environment is still going to be jumping, and this is a game a lot of people are going to be hyping up. It's Shedeur Sanders versus Caleb Williams. It is Lincoln Riley versus Deion Sanders, two of the most polarizing coaches in college football. You love to hate them or you hate to love them, something like that. So this is a big game for them. You know, obviously both coaches are talking about each other. Deion Sanders was very complimentary of Lincoln Riley, says, you know, Lincoln Riley is someone he's looked up to and played a lot of respect to. And then, you know, Lincoln Riley started right back. You know, he said, I've never met Deion, you know, but he's obviously one of the greatest players that have ever played the game of football, and he's looking forward to meeting him. And he talked about how he comes off as very genuine. You know, as a coach, if you're not genuine and you're fake and you're phony, people will see through that. Players will see through that. Other coaches will see through that. And Deion comes off as a very genuine person, so that he gave one of the highest compliments you can in being a genuine person and a genuine coach. That helps you connect with people.
Yeah, Lincoln was mentioning that, you know, Deion does what Deion does, and he's not afraid to be himself, and that was his message to the USC team is, hey, Colorado's going to have their game, they're going to do their stuff. Their last two matchups with Colorado State and Oregon have been very chippy. There's been a lot of trash talk from Colorado, which has kind of triggered some stuff from Colorado State and Oregon, but he said he told the team, let's continue to play our game. We're not going to get wrapped up in that. Just go out there, play our brand of football, do things on our terms is his message. Sierra Wright said to me the exact same thing, is that's what they're going to go do. They're going to play on their terms at Colorado, try not to get swept up in any of the media stuff or the trash talk that might go on the field. And Jamil Muhammad says he just wants guys to stay grateful for playing the game of football and go out there and play on their terms on the field, and they'll show them most by the way they play on Saturday. But kind of the main message that he got across was he wants the team to look like, hey, we're grateful out here to just play the game of football. And so it seems like USC, well-trained, obviously, and clearly focused on playing their brand of football, not getting swept up in everything that's going on in Boulder.
While we wouldn't consider this a trap game per se, it is a trash-talking game, obviously with all the media hype, and obviously Deion Sanders, you know, we know what, you know, some of the things we said in the media about other teams and whatnot. So we know that it is very easy to fall into the trash-talking game and putting up bulletin board material for so-and-so. But Lincoln Riley's teams have been very good at not saying too much. Maybe afterwards on the field, you know, that things will come out. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what these two teams are like on the field during pregame warmups, because that's a time and a place where some chippiness can go out, some trash talking that's been pent up over the week and not saying anything gets let out on the field. So I'm very interested to see how the warmups go. But yeah, I would not expect anyone to trash talk from USC. This is not going to be a game like that. It's not going to be a media hype for them building up. But there was a lot of media here, Jack. It was probably the most packed scrum Lincoln Riley's had since the season started in terms of a post-practice interview.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the UCLA game last year where Dorian Thompson-Robinson had some comments about USC. We asked the players, hey, did you see what Dorian Thompson-Robinson said? What were your thoughts? And they were all buttoned up. But after the game, Brett Nealon came out and he called UCLA the teddy bear. So if USC wins, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they're being trash talked by Colorado for them to respond then. But under Lincoln Riley, as we've seen now through about a year and a couple of games, they don't really like to get into that before the game. They focus on the football. If they win, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of that. But I think that's, you know, still something that we'll have to figure out after the game.
Just a little bit of poking, maybe. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be a very emotional game. It's a sold-out crowd. This USC is 16-0 against Colorado, and this might be Colorado's last shot to get a win over USC. So it's going to be jumping, 9 a.m., primetime kickoff, a lot of pressure. This is their shot to take down a big dog. So yeah, it's going to be an emotional game, so I would not be surprised. We see a little bit of jawing after the game. game, maybe a little bit before, but yeah, USC is going to be tight and buttoned up. And not to say that we haven't heard anything from Colorado. It's not like Colorado's come out and said anything trash talky yet, but again, it's only Tuesday, Jack.
It is only Tuesday. There was the video that came out about Shiloh Sanders talking trash on the field into Oregon cameras against Oregon, and obviously hope that he gets healthy. But that's just an example of some of the stuff that's gone on with Colorado. But it's still yet to be seen what it's going to be like for USC. Kind of the main talking point among USC fans and viewers in general after the Arizona State game was about the linebacker room on defense. Why didn't Rajon Davis play? Where was Shane Lee? Everything like that. Everyone talking about how the linebackers played, and for the first time we got to talk to Lincoln Riley about that. Alex Grinch threw in a couple comments as well. What were some of your biggest takeaways from the talk about the linebacker room?
I think the biggest takeaway is that it won't really satisfy USC's fans hungering for an answer as to why Rajon Davis did not play a single snap in the Arizona State game. Lincoln Riley said a lot about that, but he never actually said why he didn't play in that game. He basically said, Rajon Davis has improved a lot. His maturity is getting great, and he just wants him to keep being consistent. And this was a situation where they just didn't, it felt like they wanted to get more people playing time, but it just didn't play out that way. And maybe that's how the sub rotation went. They didn't get him in, but again, it didn't actually give a reason as to why he didn't actually play in the Arizona State game. And he said Rajon Davis is going to be a big part of this defense. You wait and see. But again, obviously wasn't a big part of Arizona State, but we didn't really get that answer, Jack. We didn't really come out and give an X reason as to why Rajon Davis didn't play. Will he play against Colorado? I don't know. Mason Cobb is back. All these things are going on with the linebacker room. There's so many questions. What's the stability in that room? Is there going to shorten that rotation up to just maybe 2 guys, 3 guys? But he basically said that we have 5 guys we really like in that room, and we want to get a lot of them playing time. But obviously that wasn't the case against Arizona State.
It didn't really feel like a deflection, more of maybe a punt. I think, maybe he'll be right, and we won't be asking about it in a couple weeks because Rajon Davis will be playing a bigger role. But if he doesn't start to play a bigger role, you can start to question, why are you saying that you've got 5 linebackers that you want to play, but then, it doesn't happen on Saturday? So I know USC fans had a lot of questions. You're going to continue to have a lot of questions, I think, until we see this team play a couple more games because we didn't really get a full answer. But if you want to take Lincoln Riley for his word, he believes that Rajon Davis is going to play a big role in this team. He said if he continues to be as mature as he has been and keep the same mindset that he has been, and Connor Morissette reported for us he's not planning on redshirting at all, no matter what happens this season. I think if he keeps that mindset, Lincoln Riley says he's going to have a bigger role, but that's still yet to be seen, and we'll figure out, I think, the more football games go on this year. But you mentioned Mason Cobb. I know you had a chance to talk to the former Oklahoma State linebacker today. What were some of your biggest takeaways from that conversation?
Obviously, Mason Cobb made his return to the field against Arizona State, and he kind of copped to it. He says, I didn't really feel like myself. Obviously, when you're away for that long, you're getting back into the rhythm of things. It's not surprising that he didn't feel this way. I mean, he definitely, the results on the field, kind of played out of position a little bit, over pursued, struggled with tackling. So for him to come out and say that as a team captain, I thought took a lot of accountability. He said, I wasn't up to par. And he said, he's still getting back into the rhythm of things. He said he felt better in practice this week, kind of setting that tone, being a leader. But he seemed confident that he was going to get back into his groove. But yeah, that was kind of the big thing that he went out and said, I didn't feel like myself. He'd been away for 4 weeks, going back to that San Jose State game. So just going in, he said he felt good. Asked him about his game conditioning. He said, for the most part, I felt really good. He was doing a lot of running when he was still, not actually practicing with a team, but on the sideline. So he felt he kept a good conditioning up. So he said that didn't really affect him. He just didn't feel like his full self out there.
And Lincoln Riley kind of gave a point about Mason Cobb as well, and he didn't go as far as to say that he thought Mason Cobb played particularly well. He didn't mention, how he thought he played as an individual player at all, but he did say that the defense operates very well with Mason Cobb in the rotation, and I think that's something that maybe gets overlooked a little bit, where everyone likes to look at the individual performance of a linebacker, or like a Rajon Davis, as everyone's thought, he's played so well this year in his limited opportunities, but Mason Cobb is a guy that when he's on the field has maybe the most experience of any of USC's linebackers. He's a good communicator, as Lincoln Riley said, clearly has a knack for the operation of the defense. So maybe his individual play is not compared as well to Rajon Davis or some of these other linebackers that we've been talking about. But Lincoln Riley kind of pointed out that he's a good communicator and the defense operates well. So that's maybe something that we've been overlooking when you just talk about how the entire 11 plays together with Mason Cobb in the middle.
We have to remember this is also a new defense that he is learning to play in. And, Mike linebacker is very complex. You have to know all the calls, obviously, and then this is a complex defense. So, he still might be fully integrated himself. It might be, several weeks where he finally clicks, but to say that he's also the best communicator on the defense, speaks highly to what his veteran ability and his presence out there on the field.
Our camera died, so we're improvising for our last point. Chris, we got to talk to defensive coordinator Alex Grinch about his thoughts of the defense. He used some fun analogies, but what were some of your biggest takeaways?
We're improvising like Cam Scatabo on a fake punt, and we're going to try to pull it off. But yes, he talked about baseball, Jack. I feel like you're supposed to lead this one in because he kind of talked about a pitcher pitching and how, you can throw a lot of strikes, don't get guys on base, but then you look up and you have your ERA is kind of high. You're like, I'm doing all the right things. I'm pitching well, but somehow there's still runs on the board, and that's kind of what we compared it to.
Yeah, basically he was saying that the defense had some good plays, some really big plays. Obviously, they had all the sacks and the tackles for loss. He compared those to pitcher strikeouts, and he said you can, as a pitcher, not allow many hits but still give up runs. And, if you have a big strikeout performance but you give up runs, it doesn't matter because the thing that you're trying to avoid giving up is runs. So he said, all those periphery things, basically saying the sacks and tackles for loss, they're nice, but if you give up runs, it's not a nice performance. So he was basically saying, when you look up there, the end goal, you don't want to see the points on the board. They did give up 28 points to Arizona State. So he was saying there was kind of the high and low performance of the day where they had the nice big plays, obviously an interception, the forced fumble, tackles for loss, sacks, everything like that. But you can't say it's an overall good day if you're still giving up points on the board.
And obviously that's what all the fans look to. Like, how many points did you give up? That's the basis of things, because football, you score more points than the other person, you're going to win. So your ability to limit the points is what really sets the defense apart. So they could have 8 sacks, they have 2 turnovers, but it doesn't matter because USC fans are looking at the 28 points you gave up against an Arizona State offense that gave up 0 points, scored 0 points against Fresno State, and had failed to score in 6 consecutive quarters going into this game. So I know we've talked about Kenny Dillingham and them changing things around, but he also mentioned you have to be prepared for all those things, all that creative stuff that a team is throwing out. You have to remember to be prepared for anything. So in one sense, it kind of felt like a very incomplete performance from the defense just because you did give up 28 points.
Yeah, I asked him specifically about those trick plays, and I asked him, how he felt they adjusted to them mid-game, and he said that there were some things they were prepared for, like the wildcat, but he joked, and he's like, we're not prepared for a wildcat punt, and then a wildcat fake punt pass. He was laughing about it a little bit. He gave credit to Kenny Dillingham. He says they're going to try and be prepared for anything like that moving forward, because he said, and it kind of echoes what Lincoln Riley said about, when you're USC, everyone gives you your best. He's like, everyone's going to throw out their best at us. They're going to try and just throw it all out there, try and think of creative things, and so USC needs to try and get a step ahead. But he said, baseline, even if you don't know what to do, stick to your rules on the defense. More often than not, you're going to be okay. But sometimes it's okay on a play like that where you're not ready to have a foul ball. And another analogy for him where he's basically saying, if you just don't allow a score, you can readjust for the next play. Kind of like a hitter in a 2-strike count, just fouling it off to stay alive. Even if you keep him out of the end zone, you've got a chance to stop him and force a field goal. I think USC did a pretty good job of that outside of a couple plays. When they were faced with some of those trick plays, they gave up some big gains, some first downs, but they didn't allow many touchdowns or points off that. And then they were able to get some stops for field goals. So that was one thing that he kind of mentioned. Were there any other thoughts that you have before we wrap this one up?
Tackling was also something that was asked a lot in practice, and Mason Cobb talked about it, and they kind of talked about, they made mistakes. They have to have a better mentality. They have to go and execute. And Grinch talked about it, but I found Mason Cobb's comments about it. He said, maybe it was because we didn't practice as hard or as well prior against Arizona State, leading up to the Arizona State. But he said, today in practice, I set the tone early. I had a tackle where I threw a guy to the ground, and I was going to make sure I was going to set the tone, and I wasn't going to let that happen again. So Mason Cobb already taking accountability for it and maybe setting the tone for this week. So perhaps we're going to see a little bit better effort on them. So they're thinking about it. They've heard it about 15 missed tackles according to PFF. So there's something they're aware of, and they're going to try to reverse that result, because they had been doing not much better, but better in that category. I think Alex Grinch said it equated to, for the most part, they felt like they're moving in a positive direction with tackling, but then you kind of have this step back against Arizona State.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for us on Instant Analysis. Thanks for trooping with us as we switch the cameras up. Make sure you're reading all the articles on the website. You can find all of the different interviews that we did with players after practice today here on Inside Troy on YouTube. But anyways, for Chris Treviño, I'm Jack Smith. Check out uscfootball.com for more.